Dune Spice Wars, a blend of real-time strategy and 4X strategy, developed by Shiro Games, the team behind Northgard, released this, its early access roadmap, and if you were excited about the last patch update, you should be much more excited about this one. In this Dune Spice Wars gameplay video, you will get some gameplay. I'll be playing as a tradies. There'll be time cards below if you'd like to jump around through the different updates, but I would encourage you to join me in this journey as we explore Dune Spice Wars' early access roadmap. Let's jump in. And we're jumping in somewhere spicy. Not new units, not better councillors, but first, with the announcement of the next major update and multiplayer. Spy and scheme against other players is the catchline here. However, we have some juicy detail to follow. Firstly, the time frame for it will be summer, which is your northern hemisphere summer, I'm hoping, because if it's my summer, we're going to be waiting a long time. No, but seriously, it will be your summertime, so we should expect this over the next little period of weeks to months. Now, in the detail, they note that we'll be able to choose between co-op and a free-for-all PvP mode. So I'm assuming it'll be 2 teams of 2 or every man, woman, and child fending for themselves. Now, they also note that it will be up to 4 players playing at a time. So regardless of whether Dune Spice Wars has extra factions or if we could potentially play as the same house, we don't have that level of granular detail yet, but it may very well be possible, for example, for 4 people to be playing as the smugglers or 4 people playing as Harkonnen. They may choose not to do that to balance it, but regardless, we know that the multiplayer will be available for up to 4 players playing through at a time. Really great news. If the first patch update is anything to go by, I have high, perhaps even a little too high, expectations for when this next major update will launch and just the level of quality that it will have. The other reason why I've mentioned here about the 4 players and could it be multiple factions, could we see a more competitive rule set, is because of the other announcements inside of this early access roadmap. My God, if you thought multiplayer was something, we've got more things coming, including the addition of future playable factions, weapons, new roles for councillors, and so much more. As I say, there'll be time cards below. Before I move through to the new playable faction announcement, which is kind of an announcement in of itself, I just want to quickly highlight that the first patch update for this game came out roughly 1 month after it released into early access, right? It released into early access on Steam around the end of April the 26th from memory, and we received this patch update around the 20-something of May. So to give an indicative time frame, that's how long the first one took. These next updates are scheduled for the summertime. Speaking of scheduled for the summertime, let's move through into number 2, the new playable faction. Choose to play as a brand new faction. Important to note here in the announcement, I've noted that it's playable faction, potentially leaving the door open for non-playable factions or sieges or alliances moving forward. But the juicy detail here actually is hidden in the text, where, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a 2-for-1 announcement. Firstly, of course, and most excitingly, we'll have a new faction to play, bringing the total number up from 4 to 5. It's a significant jump when you only have a few, so it could have a big deal. Loads of speculation online. Will it be Ordu? Will it be Benny Gesserit? Your guess is as good as mine. We don't have any further detail yet, but as soon as we do, I'll be pretty keen to dive into it. The secondary announcement that you can see, I put them all at the bottom right of the screen, by the way, if you haven't already noticed, is hidden in the text. Not so hidden, perhaps. A new playable faction and a new victory condition. Just to slide that one in there with the new playable faction announcement, right? As if a new victory condition doesn't deserve its own card. I believe it probably does. And their PR team probably could have milked that a little more. But either way, this is just as important, maybe actually even more important, because if it's a completely unique victory condition, then it opens up the game entirely for the 4 existing factions as well as the 1 new one. I suspect because it's hidden in here and because it's part of a summer and early access roadmap that it may relate to an existing one. For example, the assassination victory in Dune Spice Wars' early access relies on those operations, and it essentially works the same way in practice as domination, right? The end result is the same. Their capital is destroyed. So maybe there's a way that they can lace one of the other game elements through and combine it with an existing victory condition to give us a branching path to reach the end goal. Next up the third card, or it's actually the fourth, but I think it belongs here, perhaps in my order, in my mind, the Heroes of Dune. Activate your councillors is the key for this announcement. What will it actually do in practice? Well, again, the devil is in the detail. Councillors double as special agents or fighting units with unique abilities. This one, again, is kind of a two-for-whammy announcement because it leaves the door open massively. In fact, it's left all the windows open as well. There's not even a wall on that side of the house anymore. Councillors double as special agents. This, to me, suggests that they could be used as operatives within Dune Spice Wars' operations, agents. You'll be familiar with the system. It leads to victory conditions, sabotages, operations to trigger penalties on your opponent, steal, cause a rebellion, right? These are very strong. Also of note, each agent can be captured and used and bartered with, and they bring their own traits. Now, what we're potentially seeing at a date to be announced, it's important to note this is not signaled as being part of a Northern Hemisphere summer update. We'll have councillors that can act as those special agents, probably with potentially very powerful or nuanced or unique abilities to go with it. The second part here is, of course, where they mention fighting units with unique abilities, leading on to a somewhat common criticism of Dune Spice Wars, that there just aren't enough units to keep the game interesting, to keep combat engaged and unique. Well, this also brings more weighting to your councillor selection and scratches the need to bring more units in at the same time. I think it scratches that itch, as well as adding another level of detail to the selection screen and customization. And when you add those details and customizations at the start, the branching paths, the millions of possibilities that it creates as you move through, are even more pronounced and more profound. Speaking of profound and building on nicely was the third announcement around air and sand. Air and sand, they say, spaceports, ships, and other advanced units. I think there is a key hidden there in that advanced part as well, by the way. The detail here is create new buildings and powerful units to help you conquer. Conquer, obviously leaning towards more of a domination or defensive capacity. And then the detail is new buildings and powerful units. What kind of buildings and units can we expect? Well, they've kind of given it away in the title. Spaceports, first one. Ships, second one. Advanced units, likely military, and likely leading into, or at least connecting with, those councillors. That's why I chose to put that third, whereas that announced it fourth. Either way, it's probably just semantics, but the important thing here is it won't just be your councillors that I'm introducing to you as now new units in the game, but actually new units across the board. The important thing, as I mentioned, I think, is that advanced note. Another common criticism of Dune Spice Wars that I've heard and felt from time to time, depending on my strategy or frankly, actually my difficulty level, is that the middle of the game, the later game, lags. Not technically, although maybe there is a little bit of hitching, but actually in terms of how I'm feeling, how I'm enjoying the game. Is it stimulating? Is it keeping me interested? Some players argue there just isn't enough to do, not enough variety of units, not enough perhaps unexpected challenges or entropy in the game to keep it fascinating. Here we see perhaps direct but careful mention to fix this problem. Advanced units, spaceports, ships, new buildings, powerful units to help you conquer. I am really excited to see this. Also, of course, this will lend and bleed into the lore as well. A slightly more controversial topic. Is it fitting to the lore to have very few vehicles because the planet is so dangerous? The worms with the sound, and oh my god, here they are coming out of the ground swallowing me whole. On the other hand, there were lots of other vehicles in various renditions of the Dune world. Either way, from a gameplay perspective, I think it's brilliant to see. Let's not forget, this is all coming off the backdrop of the new features that they've just reduced, that 10,000 hegemony bonus to all of the factions, as well as those nice quality of life improvements like the menu auto-pausing, the old shift-click classic RTS mechanic that we needed in the game, as well as a whole host of other things that came by complete surprise. New regions, a significant boost to the smugglers, right? They can now build new things in their hideouts basically everywhere and on main centers. You consider back to the 10,000 hegemony boosts that have been provided to every single faction. And then you consider that there's a new faction coming in, signaled as part of a summer new playable faction update to Dune Spice Wars. Potentially, but most likely not at the same time as multiplayer. Judging by the way that they've phrased these here in the early access roadmap, it looks to me like the multiplayer one will come first, next major update, and then there'll be, I assume, a second major update during the Northern Hemisphere summer, my winter, that will introduce a new playable faction and a new victory condition. So we're going to introduce the multiplayer bones up to 4 players. Cooperative, or free-for-all. Then, in a following update, a new faction, a new playable faction, a new victory condition. Later on, through the European summer, likely bleeding through into the colder part of the year in an early access roadmap, we'll see Air and Sand and Heroes of Dune. And then finally, they note, of course, more updates to come. Stay tuned for more updates to be announced. So, what is the story that's being told here then? Well, in conclusion, we have an update coming soon. Speculatively, perhaps 4 weeks, 5 weeks, maybe 8. It's hard to say. 1 to 2 months. We know it will be during the European summer. That will add multiplayer to Dune Spice Wars. Following on from that, still during the European summertime, we'll have a new playable faction and a new victory condition added to the game, as I'm sure a load of other fixes and features that will be equally as exciting, buried in the detail, perhaps just like the first patch update. Moving through, once the European summer is over and the sun starts to rise for me here in the Southern Hemisphere again, we'll see Air and Sand and Heroes of Dune updates, adding more units, with, I suspect, a particular focus on that mid to late game where it comes to spaceports, ships, and advanced units, but also updates to our councillors. Our councillors now not just random faces we pick at the start for abilities that may even wean by the early game. Think about the Fremen Councilor who reveals spice. Once you've shift-clicked one of your scouts around the map, you probably know where it is, or at least have a reasonable idea. Some abilities wane over time, so it will be also brilliant to see the Heroes of Dune update, adding our councillors as special agents or fighting units with unique abilities to help to add to that replayability and overall strengthen the game, as I discussed in that section. Again, time cards below if you need to bounce back. And finally, of course, this is against a backdrop of a very solid first update and more updates to come, not scheduled for the European summer, not scheduled for to be announced, but even further afield. It therefore seems that the Dune Spice Wars early access period could potentially be a lengthy one, at the very least a number of months to go as this game stays in early access. However, with the teaser of more things, more quote updates to come on the back of things that are already scheduled out potentially many months away, I would suspect that Dune Spice Wars early access period is potentially here to stay for not the long haul, but potentially a year or more. Again, that is entirely speculative based off the updates and the rough timeframes that have been signaled so far. One thing I am fairly certain on, and I'd like to delve into in a separate video from this one because I'm frantically running out of time, is the overall direction that this sets for Dune Spice Wars, both as a strategy game itself, as a representation of Dune, the franchise perhaps, although I'm less qualified to talk on that, but more broadly on just how impressive this game is shaping up. Either way, that is a can of worms that I will not be opening today. Thank you very much for joining me for this video, updating you on the Dune Spice Wars early access roadmap. If you enjoyed it, why not consider becoming one of us? We are growing in numbers like there's no tomorrow. Thanks for your support, everybody. I'll catch you very soon for more videos and live streams. See you next time.